Everyone, welcome to week 5 of our psychological testing class. This week, we are going to be looking at intelligence and cognitive assessment. We're going to be considering intelligence theory, applications, and limitations in pastoral context. Now, this is week 5. I believe you are following and you are getting uh, yourself equipped with some of the informations we are giving out in this class. This is very, very important. And I hope that you are going to put them uh, up when it is needed. Okay, so as a matter of introduction, let me say that intelligence and cognitive assessment occupy a significant place in psychology, in education, and in clinical practice. For pastoral counselors and ministry leaders, understanding intelligence is not merely academic, it shapes how we understand our congregation's capacity, how we interpret behaviors and learning patterns, how we provide ethical guidance, how we avoid spiritualizing cognitive limitations, how we support educational and developmental needs within the church. In pastoral ministry, poor understanding of intelligence can lead to mislabeling cognitive limitations as spiritual deficiency, overestimating capacity for abstract theological reflection, ignoring developmental differences in discipleship. So this lecture explores major theories of intelligence, cognitive assessment tools, and the ethical use of intelligence concepts in pastoral settings. I divided it into different parts. Let's look at part 1, which is theories of intelligence. Under the theories of intelligence, we're going to be considering classical and psychometric theories. Okay. First of all, there was a man called Alfred Binet. Alfred Binet, Binet, in early intelligence testing. This man developed first practical intelligence test in 1905. He designed it to identify children's need, especially in their education. They are specifically tailored to children needing educational support. And this man introduced the concept of mental age. And the key principle of Alfred Binet's early intelligence testing is that intelligence is measurable through performance on structured tasks. Intelligence is measurable through performance on structured tasks. That's the position of Alfred Binet, 1905. Now, the second man I want to talk about is Charles Spearman. Charles Spearman came up with G-factor theory. G-factor theory. Spearman proposed general intelligence, G, small g, underlying cognitive ability, and also talked about specific abilities, which he represented with small s, which is domain-specific skills. Don't forget, Spearman talked extensively on general intelligence, okay, underlying cognitive ability, represented with small g. We call it G factor theory. So, and also specific ability, small s, domain specific skill, that's skill, small s, that's skills. The implication of Spearman's theory is that there is a common cognitive capacity underlying all intellectual performance. Anywhere you see cognitive capacity, I've told you in this class that when we talk about cognition, cognition means thoughts. Okay? There is a common cognitive capacity behind every intellectual performance. Okay? That is clear. That's what Charles Spearman, G factor theory, is talking about. Now, the third person I want to talk about is David Wechsler. David Wechsler. He authored modern IQ testing. Now, Wechsler's intelligence scale deals with verbal comprehension, perceptual reasoning, working memory, and processing speed. That's what David Wechsler modern IQ testing is all about. In this part of the world, they use that for, psychological assessment, psychometric tests for children, especially those in school. That is what we use it for, modern IQ, intelligent quotient testing. According to Wechsler, intelligence is the global capacity to act purposefully, think rationally, and deal effectively with the environment. I want to take that again. According to Wechsler, intelligence is the global capacity to act purposefully, think rationally, and deal effectively with the environment. These three scholars' contributions to intelligence and cognitive assessment their contributions are profound, and we can't just forget it. Now, coming down to contemporary theories of intelligence, contemporary theories of intelligence, we have Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner talks about multiple intelligences, and at least he proposed 8 to 9 intelligences that when you see a man, there's tendencies for such a man to have at least 8 to 9 intelligences when it comes to linguistic, logical mathematics, spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, existential. Those are 8 to 9, intelligences proposed by Howard Gardner. Multiple intelligences: linguistic, logical mathematics, spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetics, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, and existential. The existential is, debated, but, 8 to 9 multiple intelligences. So there is an insight for us as pastor. Church setting often overvalue linguistic intelligence. For example, in preaching and teaching, and undervalue others, such as musical, relational, practical. Some of those things we hold preaching, teaching more esteem than all other aspects of the ministry, right? That is the insight for the pastoral. Let's look at Robert Sternberg. Robert Sternberg, talked about triarchic theory. Triarchic theory. And according to Robert Sternberg, there are 3 types of triarchic theory. Three types. Number one is analytical intelligence. Number two is creative intelligence. And number three is practical intelligence. What is the application of this? A church member may score average IQ, but demonstrate strong practical wisdom in ministry leadership. Okay, we need to take note of that. A member may score average on IQ, but when it comes to the strong practical aspect of ministry leadership, the person can do better in that. So people have these three kinds of intelligence: analytical, creative, right? And you can see that in display when you give assignment to people in the church. Now, looking at the next one, emotional intelligence, EI. This is, made popular by Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman, made emotional intelligence EI popular. There are core components of emotional intelligence. Number one, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. These are core components of emotional intelligence. The significance of this to pastoral ministry is that emotional intelligence often predicts ministerial effectiveness more than IQ. If you are leading a congregation, you are pastoring a church, you must be emotionally intelligent. Otherwise, you run into trouble. As a husband, as wife, in the family, in the home, we must be emotional intelligent. And that will save us from a lot of trouble. Self-awareness is very important. Self-regulation, ability to regulate yourself, motivation. There are a lot of discouragement everywhere. You know, self-motivation, empathy, you know, for one another, and social skills. These are very, very important. Looking at the part two, which is cognitive assessment. We just looked at intelligence assessment. We are looking at cognitive assessment. What is cognitive assessment? Cognitive assessment evaluates one, intellectual functioning. Cognitive assessment evaluates intellectual functioning. Two, memory. Memory. Number three, attention. Number four, executive functioning. Number five, processing speed. And number six, learning abilities. These are what determines cognition of any man. All right, how functioning we are in life. And some of the tools that are commonly used for cognitive assessment are the following: Wechsler scale. That's something we call Wechsler scales. These are tools we use for cognitive assessment. Stanford Binet, that's another one. Neuropsychological batteries, we use that. An academic achievement test. Those are the commonly used tools for cognitive assessment. What are the purposes of intelligence testing? Why are we doing intelligence tests? Number one, to identify intellectual disability. In so many underdeveloped countries, everybody is in school. Many people don't even want to be there because they don't have that capacity to understand anything you are teaching. So, but when we do intelligent testing, we will know who is capable or who is not. Everybody cannot be in school. All right. Number two, to diagnose learning disorders. Some people cannot learn easily, learn things. You teach them till tomorrow. So intelligence testing will help us to diagnose learning disorders. Number three, educational placements. Educational placements. That's one of another reasons why we carry out intelligence testing. Number four, cognitive decline screening. Cognitive decline screening. Number five is clinic diagnosis, for sure, clinic diagnosis. And number six is research. We do intelligent testing for research. So testing must be administered by licensed professionals. This is very important. That's why having a PhD is not sufficient for you to be able to perform intelligence testing. There's a need for you to be registered with the college before you can do this. You can't just take people and begin to conduct tests on them. You must register. You must be registered. In this part of the world, you must belong to, the College of Psychologists, okay, for you to be able to do that. So you can't just test people. All these tests we're talking about are being administered by licensed professionals only. Okay, we must take note of that. So if you want to, after your PhD, you want to, be working on this, you have to take some specialized courses and also register with the college, the College of Psychologists in the environment you find yourself. The part three is applications in pastoral contexts. Applications in pastoral contexts. We're looking at heavy application in ministry. Discipleship design. Discipleship design. Understanding cognitive diversity helps adapt teaching method in discipleship. The major, aspect of church's ministry is the making of the disciples. So you will need to understand cognitive diversity for us to adapt teaching method to individual. And of course, simplify theological abstraction. To be able to simplify theological abstractions. And number three, to be able to use visual, experiential, and relational approaches. It's very important. Then when it comes to working with children and youth, it helps to recognize learning differences, children struggling with ADHD and intellectual disability. It will help us to recognize that, and also to prevent spiritual shame and mislabeling behavior as rebellion, because that's what we do most of the time. When we see any misbehavior, we label them so fast as a rebellion, and that is not what they are. So when we carry out some of these tests, it helps us in not shaming people, not labeling people inappropriately. Looking at the premarital and marital, this is another area where we need it. Many people will be coming up for us as ministers to join them in holy matrimony. It is important for us that it's applicable in this area. Cognitive differences may affect communication styles among the couples, and of course their problem-solving capacity, emotional regulation. During the counseling, we need to assess some of all these things. So cognitive and intellectual assessments are applicable in premarital and marital counseling. What of in leadership development? Not only in the youth ministry, in making of the disciples, in working with children and youth, not only in premarital and marital counseling, it's also useful in leadership development. High IQ is not equal to high spiritual maturity. High emotional intelligence often predicts conflict resolution skills. Also often predict empathy, often predict stability under pressure. Okay, so as a leader, we need to understand this. As we begin to gradually rounding off this, let's look at the theological reflections. Biblical anthropology affirms imago Dei in all persons, that every human is an image of God. It also affirms diversity of gifts, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Also affirms wisdom, not reducible to IQ. Okay, when you read James, the book of James, you see different type of wisdom being mentioned there. Okay, so biblical anthropology affirms wisdom, not reducible to IQ, and of course, value beyond cognitive productivity. Human being carries value beyond cognitive productivity. So the church must resist intellectual elitism. Okay? The church must resist anti-intellectualism. And the church must resist reduction of human worth to test scores. These are very important because when you put all these things first, the church may fall victim of intellectual elitism, that you just want everybody in your church to you build unnecessary expectation that everybody in your church must be an elite. Okay, everybody must understand. I don't need to explain anything. People understand you are speaking above the people unconsciously. And of course, anti-intellectualism. You don't want to raise ignorance congregation. You are not kicking against intellectualism. And of course, you're not reducing human being to, test score. You determine them by their test score. What are the limitations and the ethical cautions? Limitations of intelligence testing. It involves cultural bias. We've talked about it. Tests often reflect Western education norms. Don't forget that. And the person who made the tools made them according to the environment he found himself at that time. So some test tools are not made for some people. So when you are interpreting or you are applying them, you are not basing it on your culture, on what you know. You are putting others into consideration. Tests often reflect Western educational norms. So we have to be very, very careful when applying it in other parts of the world. Socioeconomic influence, poverty impacts language exposure, educational opportunity, and test familiarity. And this is a serious issue. Okay, so we need to understand the role poverty plays in, language learning, in educational opportunity. Not everybody has that, and test familiarity. Now, another one is reductionism. Reductionism. Intelligence is not equal to wisdom. Somebody can be intelligent and may not be wise. The wisdom is a gift from God. Intelligence is not also equals to spiritual maturity. They're not the same. Intelligence is not equal to moral character. The fact that somebody is intelligent doesn't mean that person should behave right. That person may be doing wrong thing. That's why you see in those days in school, the most brilliant student in the class is not a good boy in class. He's a rough boy, is a trance. So you play trance in class. You won't come. The most intelligent people in class sometimes don't stay in class. And they are intelligent. So the fact that somebody is intelligent does not mean that that person has moral character. That does not mean that person is spiritually matured or somebody is having wisdom. So we have to be cautious of reductionism. The next one there is labeling risk in churches. Okay, it's a danger. It is very dangerous. The fact that somebody is slow does not mean the person is spiritually weak. And the fact that somebody is gifted does not mean the person is spiritually superior. So we've got to be careful, in labeling people in church. Pastoral ethical guide. All right. We must not administer psychological tests without training. I've said this in one of the classes that it requires training. Beside academic work you are doing, you've got to be trained to be able to carry out psychological assessment. And there's a need for us to make referral. Okay, when cognitive impairment is suspected, when you suspect cognitive impairment, make a referral. And of course, we must maintain confidentiality. All right, the information of the people is very important. You need to avoid diagnostic language without competence. Using of diagnostic language without competency is very, very dangerous. And of course, distinguish sin from neurological limitation. Okay, when you see people who are having neurological problem, that does not mean they are sinful. I think there's a story like that in the Bible when they asked Jesus, who committed sin? Is it this man's father or his mother that sinned that made this man to be like this? And Jesus told them, no, it's not. It's not because of the sin of his father or his mother, but God. You know, is a sovereign God. He just want to glorify himself. Want to glorify himself in all this things. So we need to be careful. So by distinguishing sin from neurological limitations. Uh case studies. I have case studies for you this week that I want you to work on. I'd like you to choose someone in your class that you will discuss this with this week. There is a case one and case two. I have two cases for you. The first one is this: a teenager struggles to memorize scripture and is labeled as lazy, later diagnosed with dyslexia, dyslexia. Okay. How should pastoral care change? How should pastoral care change? That's the first case study. Number two, a church leader is brilliant intellectually, but emotionally volatile. A church leader is brilliant intellectually, but emotionally volatile. How do we assess leadership readiness? How do we assess leadership readiness? These are two cases that I have for you. I would like you to choose someone in your class and discuss this with them. The first one, a teenager struggles to memorize scripture and is labeled lazy. Later got diagnosed with dyslexia. How should pastoral care change? And case two, a church leader is brilliant intellectually, but emotionally volatile. How do we assess leadership readiness? So at the end of this week 5, you must be able to explain major theories of intelligence. You must be able to distinguish between psychometric and multidimensional models. You must be able to identify appropriate and inappropriate pastoral applications. You must be able to critically evaluate intelligence testing with theological anthropology. Okay, and you must be able to apply ethical boundaries in ministry context. In summary, intelligence is multifaceted, it's culturally embedded, measurable but not limited, not equivalent to spiritual maturity. Pastoral ministry, therefore, must respect cognitive diversity, must avoid reductionism, integrate psychology with theology wisely, must uphold human dignity beyond IQ. Imago Dei, don't forget, man was created in the image of God. Okay, if you have any question for me on what we have done this week, I know some of you are asking me for the tools. Some of these tools, you can Google them, they are online. If you want to have them, you might have to subscribe or pay for them in some instance to those who are selling it. So we have them online. They are not just, you can't just, get them easily. You need to subscribe for them or pay for them to get them. Okay, so there are a lot of these tools that are available. If you have any question for me, please feel free to send an email or to reach out to me through our platform, your portal, and I will be there to answer all these questions. So this week 5, we're talking about intelligence and cognitive assessment. And please read your textbook and the portion assigned to us to read this week. And by the time you join all this together, you should be good to go. It's nice talking to you today. Until I come your way in the next 1 week, enjoy and have a nice week.